Hello everyone, it's been a while. I'm finally doing the book reviews, better late than never. So here I am gracing your screens. In a way, I'm kind of glad that the passage of time has happened because it's given me the opportunity to reflect and notice the changes conscious loving has made in my life. And how I took stock of these changes actually was during a breathwork session a few weeks ago when I breathed, not facilitated. And in it, I remember feeling intense gratitude for the premise of taking full responsibility in life and how transformative that can be for people and how it has been for me. I remember in the book where I read the analogy of the abusive relationships and victimhood, and how, yes, the woman getting beaten up by her partner is indeed a victim, but it's important to acknowledge that she created the situation for the abuse to occur. And I remember my mind being absolutely blown at that point and that aha moment kicking in. So for me, I think it was a reframing of something that's kind of universally accepted as truth, and to question that certainly feels, I know, a little bit unpalatable or something because of cultural norms, but it highlights to me that when we do critically think about some things that shouldn't be questioned, we can kind of transcend into a new realm of understanding and being. And I think in this case, it kind of sheds the inherent pressure to agree when a person uses their position as a victim for defense. And it's not denying their experience, but seeing them as capable of maybe exerting influence over their situation, because they played a hand in creating it. So I think it's like flipping from something negative into a positive with the call to action. And I really like the firm stance that the Hendricks take around victimhood. I like how they don't tread carefully around it, which is kind of a going against the grain there, and how people normally act around victims. They're really direct, and I think this directness pierces through, from my experience, the delusion that can come with victimhood. I actually have it here on page 87. They said there's absolutely no healthy payoff for claiming victimhood. Never, ever. The most effective way to get out of an abusive relationship is to acknowledge your role in perpetuating it, then get out. And I think this just kind of shows that maybe sometimes actually people need directness to instigate change. And it made me reflect on work as a breathwork facilitator when interacting with clients and looking back on kind of supportive teachers that I've had in the past. They're always firm but fair, and they always acted out of integrity. And I think you can be direct but still be compassionate. And it made me think of the AOB Code of Ethics when about committing to interacting with clients in a truthful, courteous, compassionate manner. And for me, being direct is telling the microscopic truth, but being compassionate means actually knowing what compassion is and what that actually feels like. So you can communicate from that place of empathy. And from doing breathwork sessions, from the experience of doing it in the course and continue to do it, I think I really kind of felt into the feeling of compassion in my body. And the ones a few weeks ago, I remember crying tears of love and compassion myself because of what I learned from this book, of, you know, the process of assuming responsibility in this past year, and how much my life has kind of irrevocably changed because of it and become way more rewarding. And I think of the people in my life that I would consider as doing the opposite to that. Those who were kind of reveling in the martyrdom. Like, it's come to mind my mother and like an ex friend of mine, where they would demand for others to see them as victims. And maybe that breathwork session brought into that idea of maybe they're craving feelings of compassion but just can't access it because they're stuck in that cycle of dependency. And what I've learned from this course and this book is that reclaiming responsibility and redirecting the focus towards the self and generating feelings of compassion ourselves rather than searching for it externally is really powerful. And I think for, to be able to communicate empathically. I think I can still have compassion for those who see themselves as victims. But this book, I think, has encouraged me to kind of strengthen the stance of, yes, it's okay to make that empowered choice and get out of victimhood. And I think there's another quote that kind of stood out to me on page 110, I think it was. And it was talking about power. And it says, power belongs to the people who take responsibility. It flows to those who claim creation. And there's no power in victimhood. So I think this is what empowerment is to me and what it's all about. And power gathers momentum and you can physically feel it in the body. And as a facilitator, I think it's really important, because if your role is to empower others, I think you need to feel that power within yourself and have that kind of inner knowing that it's possible, so that you can believe in the potential of others to feel that too. And I kind of see now the emphasis of commitments in Alchemy of Breath and Conscious Loving, because now I understand that they represent the kind of starting point to feeling empowerment. And saying the words, I commit to acting from the awareness that I'm 100% the source of my reality, and I commit to the full empowerment of people around me. And just saying it out loud, I think, is a first step of assimilating that power into the system, and repeating this kind of embeds it into the psyche until it becomes a way of life. And I find working with commitments can actually open the pathway to empowerment before breathe, because I remember using the exercise at the back of the book and focusing on commitments just to see what other counter commitments would throw up. And I kind of found that was a great way of kind of getting into being able to tell the microscopic truth. And speaking of which, I'll reveal that I'm in a relationship at the minute. Who knows, maybe the learnings from this book helped with that, but I'm currently, I suppose, witnessing the application of this knowledge play out in my life at the minute. And I think when I first read this book, I appreciated the concept of the microscopic truth, and I could do it with friends and family, no bother. But once I started a romantic partnership, I discovered kind of how difficult it can be to tell the microscopic truth. Because as I'm kind of navigating this new territory of being one with other, there's fear, trauma, baggage from other relationships, and that conditioned fear that the Hendricks referred to, that, telling the truth will have negative consequences or burst that love bubble. But what I recently discovered was my inability to tell myself the microscopic truth first was actually contributing to a huge build-up of energy. And once I realised that, that energy just dissipated. And as the time passed, there was an occasion recently where my boyfriend and I held space for one another and reflected on kind of the instances in the past few months where we should have said the microscopic truth, but we didn't. And we did in that moment. It kind of made me realise that the telling of the microscopic truth is a process in itself, and it requires kind of the readiness to articulate it out loud, and for each person to individually process what the truth even is. And I don't think it's really encapsulated when the Hendricks kind of referred to it as timing, and I think maybe this is more relevant for new relationships, but does highlight the importance of context, I think. The couples throughout the book went through a process before they ever ended up in front of the Hendricks. And I think in the case of my boyfriend and I, we had a full day of self-care and a few pints of Guinness before we had that conversation. So maybe there's a cultural context too. But reflecting on how this transfers to facilitating a breathwork session, I've realised holding space is a process, and it may take time for the truth to be known. But what's crucial, I think, particularly in the early stages, is building safety. Just like in a relationship, safety needs to be built over time to kind of dispel that fear and for clarity to emerge. So look, I know I'm almost out of time, and to conclude this review, I suppose I can't emphasize enough how illuminating this book has been on the breathwork journey, but also to my life in general. I think both go hand in hand at this stage. I feel like this book has been a Bible and will continue to be something to refer back to and revisit and learn something new depending on the life stage I'm at. And maybe this review today is kind of reflective of that as well. And And maybe I say Bible for a reason, because this joins the altar breathwork sessions, and the commitments have become somewhat of a creed that I live by. And now I think I fully understand how integral this book is in terms of the teachings of Alchemy of Breath, and reminds me that trauma is stored in the body but revealed in relationships. And this book really reinforces for me how we need to work together to heal, and particularly in kind of that romantic partnership as well. I think more stuff comes up than in other relationships. But yeah, I think the practical wisdom is what makes this book so transformative. And I feel I'm maybe embodying a bit of that transformation now, and I really hope to engender that for people I work with going forward as well. So yeah, thanks for listening.